Welcome to Expedition Networking, a special segment of the Networking RX podcast. I'm Frank Agan, founder and president of AmSpirit Business Connections and your host for this program. For those of you who are familiar, on the Networking RX podcast, we share information and have conversations with experts, such as authors, researchers, and social scientists. And all of these programs are aimed at helping you learn how to become better at building professional relationships and understanding why they work. In this Expedition Networking segment, however, we're going to bring on successful entrepreneurs and unique professionals and explore their networking adventure and learn how they used relationships to create lasting success. Today on Expedition Networking, we have direct from Denver, Colorado, Donna Riccardo. She is the CEO and founder of Red Stiletto, a public speaking training company for entrepreneurs. Their tagline is "Get to the point." So let's get to the point. Welcome, Donna.
Hi, Frank. Thanks for inviting me to be on your show today.
This is wonderful. This is going to be. We've talked before. I've looked at your profile. I think you'll have an interesting story for us, and that's really where I want to kick it off, to share a little bit about yourself and your business, as well as the journey to kind of get to this point. You can start wherever you want. If you want to start at the end and work back, or start at the end and go to and fill it all in, but just what the journey is. I think a lot of times in business, we just see people and we see their success and they just pulled up in a car and it was there, and it's not. So go ahead.
Great. Thank you. Yeah, it wasn't like that at all.
Okay.
My original career was as a hairdresser. And after I'd worked my way through an apprenticeship, I was looking for, well, now what's next? I was at the top of my game. I was a Madison Avenue hairdresser, and I had my clientele, and I was looking for how could I grow. And I would walk around just talking to myself. No one else does that, right? Just talk to myself, wondering, asking, like, what's next? What's next? Just thinking for what seemed like a very long time. It was probably at least a year. So this is a little woo-woo moment. But one day I was walking home from work and I'm talking to myself, what's next? Now what? And I hear teach. And there was no one near me. I'm looking around. Teach what? What does that mean? What do I teach? Who do I teach? What do I do with that information? Tell me more. No more information was coming, but it was so crystal clear and loud that I knew that's what I had to do. And I kept my eyes open for opportunities, and our salon had a big hair show coming up. And while that's a story for another time, I got involved in the hair show and found out on the day of the show that I really didn't know how to teach or speak. I didn't have it connected that teaching was public speaking. And when it was my turn to speak, I had to be rescued off the stage because no words were coming out of my mouth because I was so terrified. And they took the microphone from me and I had to leave the stage.
Oh, wow.
So that's really where it started. And plus, it didn't help that I was terrified of people. Even one-to-one, I couldn't even look at a person and talk to them at the same time. So I like to say it was divine intervention that I even became a hairdresser in the first place. So I then had another dramatic failing as a speaker in the beauty industry. Didn't go well once again. And at some point it came together for me, I can learn this. Because typically people in the beauty industry, they're mostly men that are on stage, at least at that time, big personalities, gift of gab, and they're up there throwing hair around and doing their shtick. And I am none of that. So it just never occurred to me that I could learn it. And after that second huge failing, I did go and start learning. And so since then, years and years of Toastmasters. I got very involved in a personal development company, the biggest one in the world, and I became a trainer for them and used that work to go through and deal with my fear. I also then later became a trainer in the beauty industry, so doing what I originally started out wanting to do is to teach other hairdressers, and worked my way forward from all that. And since I'd been in New York and on Madison Avenue, and we were very fashion-oriented type of salon, I really love all of that. So when the time came for me to look at what's next for me, like, moving forward, fast forwarding to now, it was really to bring all of my experience now that I have from the last 30 years to help other entrepreneurs so that they don't have to struggle and deal with what, the way I did it. I can bring it all to them, and they can condense time and get effective at speaking a lot sooner than I did.
Yeah, I can't imagine you on stage speechless. I'm speechless. I can't. Well, that's a great story. How do you use professional relationships? How have you used it, that in business networking to kind of create success in your life? And I know you're with BNI. You're allowed to say that word. That's fine. I know they're a competitor of ours. That's fine. But how that all kind of came together.
Yeah. Well, it really started when I was a hairdresser in the beginning, and I only saw this in retrospect because I did hair for about 20 some years. And I know they say that it's really all about your client and the conversation should be theirs, but I apologize to anyone that I may know who is hearing this, but I really ended up having that time be more about me and the conversations around what I was doing. And then I stopped doing hair for 12 years, moved across the country and started doing hair again. And somewhere in there, I had learned that my attention really needed to be on other people. And I can't say I was wildly successful in New York as a hairdresser. I got by. And,
right.
I really could have done very, very well given the place and the situation I was in at the time and, all the right connections and all the right people. But it was me that had it not be as successful as it could have been for me. And then when I went back to doing hair, I put my attention on the people. And for the first time in that long career, I began to be successful because it was really about creating those relationships, being interested in what was important to them, having the conversation revolve all around other people. And so then my business grew.
I guess here's my question.
Mm-hmm.
You've kind of identified that point where there was this switch. And I think that's interesting because, there's that saying out there, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's when you really kind of take that in, because I was in college and law school and I just was focused on learning and really wasn't at all wrapped up in the relationships. And it really is all about the relationships. When you made that shift, was it a conscious shift, I need to do this, or it just serendipitous kind of a change in your approach? Do you know? Can you remember?
Yeah, it was a conscious shift because when I started back in the salon again here in Denver, I was doing things as I had done them before. And my clientele was growing, and I had started from scratch because I didn't know anybody on the other side of the country. And I was doing things as I had done in the past, and it wasn't really going very well or growing very well. And at some point, there was a moment, I don't know what precipitated that moment, but there was a moment when I went to myself, I need to put my attention on other people. I need to be consistent in what I'm providing in as far as how I show up for
Mm-hmm.
them, and also what I'm delivering to them, the service I'm giving, and in the conversation, it needs to be them oriented, client oriented. So there was a moment, and then things really began to grow from there.
Right. And that's very interesting that I wonder, and of course we don't know, we can speculate on it. Denver, Colorado is not New York City. And the Midwest and Denver's somewhat the Midwest. The Midwest there's just kind of a different, people are all great, but they're just, how people communicate is different.
Yeah.
And I wonder if maybe in New York, people don't want you talking the way it wouldn't have, that maybe your approach in Denver may not have gone over in New York. Who knows? Who knows, right? We can speculate. What's that?
Yeah, hard to know.
Yeah, very hard to know.
I suspect it would have, though, because the people are always interested in there's the WIFM, right? What's in it for me? People are interested in themselves.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. People, I know, and I don't go to the salon. I go get my hair cut, and that 15 minutes of running through the barber shop or there's a difference when the conversation's about me. I notice when they're talking about themselves and when it's a conversation I'm involved in. So very interesting.
Yeah.
couple get to know you questions for fun. What do you do to get your mind off of work?
Well, when it's possible, before COVID, I was able to ballroom dance. So I'm a ballroom dancer and I compete, and I'd have weekly lessons, and we have a big competition here once a year in Denver. But if I really wanted to get carried away, I could probably go somewhere almost every weekend throughout the year and compete somewhere. But right now I'm not doing that at all. So what I'm doing instead is as much yoga as I can.
Oh, good for you. Good for you. Now with ballroom dancing, is that is that a professional, I don't want to say a professional sport, but are there people who do that for a living, quote, air quotes?
Absolutely. And there's even a push to get it accepted into the Olympics. Absolutely.
Okay.
In the category called dance sport.
Interesting. So if you could be a professional athlete, would that be it? Would that be your thing?
Probably. Although I would have had to probably start when I was 3.
Right. Well, that's okay. That's okay. Are there any causes or charities you strongly believe in?
The one that I think is really closest to my heart is the sex trafficking. That just I can't even imagine the horror of that for young kids, especially the girl. I mean, I don't know, it's probably boys too, but
It
mostly hear about the girls. But just for a kid to have that be ripped away from their families and then be treated like that is just beyond horrifying to me.
That's interesting. There's a woman here in Columbus who has started a charity. Columbus is kind of at the crossroads. This is really a hot spot because, and Denver too, because you guys are on I-70, if I'm not mistaken, I think 70. Yes. So there's a lot going on along that corridor. Other parts of the country may be a little more oblivious to it, but it's eye-opening. And she explains that it is men, not as prevalent, but it is, and that's certainly a big problem. I guess back to networking. If you could go back in time to say, you're still in high school, talk to yourself, what advice would you give yourself about networking and building relationships?
I was very shy, and knowing how different I am now, and looking back, my attention was all on myself. I was super self-conscious and very shy, and I would say that what there would be to do is to begin putting my attention on other people and what's important to them and how can I help.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's that's a very good lesson. I guess the last question I would have for you, and this is your opportunity to talk. Well, this has all been your opportunity to talk, but what could the audience do to help you in your business?
Well, if they are interested in taking public speaking to the next level, I have people that have been winging it, but now they want to show up as a pro and want to grow and get seen, heard, known as an expert in their field. I can help there. If they're just starting out, I have people that are really just kind of like I was, kind of scared to death, but they want to speak. And sometimes they don't even know what they want to speak about. They just want to get out there. And I can help them there. And some people have a message. Maybe they've had some clients who've had a life experience, dramatic life experience that really impacted them, changed them forever. And they want to help others that are dealing with those same kinds of circumstances. And if people have been speaking and they just, they need coaching and guidance and, they're really ready to take, up level it. They're beyond the winging it, but now they're ready to go even beyond that. So I can help them with that.
Best way to get a hold of you through your website?
Yep, DonnaRiccardo.com.
And I will put that in the show notes so people can have access to it.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time today and kind of educating us on your journey of success via networking. To wrap things up, remember, we're looking for some enterprising business types to join our team as franchisees of AmSpirit Business Connections. Our franchisees work with entrepreneurs, sales representatives, and professionals in their area to help them become more successful through networking and the exchange of quality business referrals in a structured weekly morning meeting. This is a unique franchise opportunity, you see, because these meetings are in the morning. A successful business type or professional can add this franchise opportunity onto what they're already doing. Again, all of our franchisees do something else. For a couple hours in the morning, a few mornings a week, these franchisees work the AmSpirit Business Connections model. The rest of the time, they're attorneys, accountants, realtors, coaches, and consultants of various kinds. The wonderful thing is that not only do our franchisees realize a financial gain from operating the AmSpirit Business Connections model, but the business networks that they build and develop become a great source of referrals for their primary business as well. Perhaps you know someone, perhaps you are that someone. Whatever the case, to learn more about the AmSpirit Business Connections franchise opportunity, please contact me using the email in the show notes or the one we provide at the end of this program.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.